Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen LeBlanc. I am the CEO of KGL Communications and an advisor for infrastructure ventures. Before we start, I just have a few housekeeping items that I want to go over. We have a really fantastic panel today, and I know you all want to listen to the discussion. If you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, which you will find at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to do this throughout the presentation today, as the panelists may pick out a couple of the questions along the way. And then at the end, I'm going to return and help facilitate a Q&A session. And now we will hear a few words and introductions from InfraTalk America publisher Greg Nadeau via a short pre-recorded video. We know you will thoroughly enjoy the discussion and take away some great insights.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Nadeau, publisher of InfraTalk America. I'd like to welcome you to Chasing Innovation in the Industry, Workforce Readiness, Technology Adoption, and Social Sustainability, a virtual policy roundtable presented by InfraTalk America and sponsored by Trimble in collaboration with HDR and Infotech. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that this presentation was originally scheduled to take place live at the IHEAP 2022 conference in Fort Myers, Florida. Unfortunately, due to the destructive nature of Hurricane Ian, the session was canceled. We are pleased to provide a platform to share this discussion on the relationship between technology, workforce, and sustainable project delivery. Our thoughts are with the residents of Florida, many of whom continue to recover from this horrific natural disaster. I would now like to hand the session over to our presenters, Ev Tripolitis, Tara Blythe, and Jennifer Steen.
Thank you so much for joining us for our presentation on chasing innovation in the industry. I want to give a big shout out to InfraTalk America for allowing us to jump on their podcast and webinar to give this presentation that we were supposed to give in person. Today's presenters, which we've already been introduced, my name is Jennifer Steen. We also have Tara Blythe and Ev Tripolitis, and we are going to be talking about a number of different aspects. We actually got together and came up with this topic where we were chatting about some of the challenges that we're each facing in our everyday projects and jobs, and realized that even though we're coming from different aspects of our careers and what we actually do for our everyday jobs, is that we face the same challenges. Now, I have a background in civil engineering, and I come from the design side on the consulting background. Ev comes from this as a civil engineer, but also a sustainability analyst. And Tara is coming from this from a people and business strategy aspect. And we're all facing these same challenges of how we're moving the industry forward, but now having to train people and move people forward with new workflows in our industry because of technology and everything behind there. So that's where this all started. And we were supposed to present at IHEAP, and now we get to talk to you today. Some of the aspects that we're going to be talking about is we're going to introduce some of the key concept that we came up with that we think is the critical point of moving forward in our industry. We're going to give a perspective of what's going on today, and then the three big terms that we're going to be throwing around that we want to explain deeper and show you where the value is and why you should be listening to us is around social sustainability, digital delivery, and workforce development. So kicking off this introduction, we're going to be taking a look at where everything starts. So in this quick big Venn diagram that I'm showing you right now is we have three big circles. We have our industry, our technology, and our workforce all overlapping. When we were talking, we were coming up with some ideas like, wait, if we have our industry and our workforce, that's overlapping and we're impacting, because of the changes that are going on right now, our employment. And what does that look like? But then when we take our workforce and technology and all of the new things that are coming out, especially over the past 5 years, I mean, even in the past 6 months, just how fast technology is changing, we need training. And what does that look like across the board for every generation out there that we have in our industry? And then our industry and all of that technology, it's changing our processes and our workflows and how we're delivering our work. So ultimately, the three big terms that I had already mentioned was digital delivery, social sustainability, and workforce development. And that all culminates in the middle of where we want our ideal future to be. So that's where we want to focus on. And talk you through that today. So to start off, I want to just talk about that industry, that first big circle, and what does that mean when we talk about the industry? And we're looking at this from an infrastructure and transportation perspective. And for many, 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 many years, all the way back from when it all started, everything was on paper. Everything was planimetric. We were able to take our design intent and all of our information and how we wanted to build something and put it on paper. And then we would hand that paper over to someone else and they would take a look at it and they would build it. And then they would hand that paper over possibly to someone else. And then they would operate and maintain throughout a infrastructure asset throughout its life cycle. But now we have all of this great technology out there where we can actually take that information and put it virtually. We can do it in 3D. We have all this data and we have a lot more data that we can use and produce something at the end of the day to have better projects, to have better infrastructure and better maintenance through that. So we're moving into this model-centric world and having a number of different data exchanges across the board. And this happens throughout the transportation industry. So when we talk about industry, that's what we're thinking about as a whole.
All right, when we talk about workforce throughout this presentation, we're defining it with specificity to our industry, but we're also talking about terms that range across industry, our current state in regards to what we're facing within our workforce. Even before the pandemic, work was undergoing a transformation. Automation, artificial intelligence, changing the way people work and the skills needed to complete those tasks. Today, there's an even greater strain across our industries, whether that's healthcare or manufacturing or civil and infrastructure construction. The world is facing an unprecedented shortage of skilled labor. This, coupled with our declining birth rate and forcing organizations to relook at workforce development in a different way. Now, you're not going to hear me use this term too much more because I don't like the word workforce. I like to focus on people. And centering on all these pieces are people. We're going to talk about retooling and the pace of change. We're going to talk about that talent shortage, how our market industry and growth competition is driving that shortage, and where we're seeing unprecedented increases in the cost of talent. And then we're going to really lean into the changing landscape. That includes things like technology advancement, which you'll hear my peers continue to underscore as we look to where we can not just chase, but get ahead of the innovation we're seeing in the industry and how it affects our people. As well as generational shifts and embracing diversity, looking at the type of who people truly are and adapting our methods for what they need, and looking at different ways to engage them in their seats, thinking smarter, not harder with some of those pieces. The one thing we know is that the one thing we are certain of is that there's uncertainty and we need to adapt. So much of this is going to be tools that we can give you for you to keep up.
So let's talk a little bit about technology in the industry. What technology is available? We know that these things are available and what they mean, but they keep advancing. And is our industry and workforce ready? As we go through the life cycle of the project, are we considering technology along with people? And are we upskilling people at the same rate as we're innovating? And let's see where we are today. So we can apply the same innovative mindset to people. People are the biggest tool that we have available. Having a knowledge base and knowledge of technology is really what is going to empower the implementation of innovation as we go forward. So in today's current state, the process is to move beyond digital delivery following technology implementation. We'll be discussing social sustainability and workforce development and how it is impacting our three main things. So in defining social sustainability really centralizes our message. It is the intersection of people and progress in the industry. Social sustainability is considering impacts on people. In the industry, it can be defined by a few of the examples on the screen. And as we go forward, we'll go into a few more specifics about how this social sustainability is impacting you and the things that you can do specifically. So quickly, I did also want to review why emissions and environmental sustainability are considered when it comes to social sustainability. Right now, in our current state, the impacts of climate change, of lack of resilient infrastructure are really, really more heavily focused on or more heavily impacting underrepresented and underprivileged communities.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about workforce in our current state, not just the challenges that we're facing, but some of the things that are going a little deeper on how we're facing them and why that really matters and why it matters in a different way today than it has many, many years in the past. Maurice Conti, who's a futurist and likes to focus specifically on our industry. So if I can do plugs for anything and any sources that I have here, I would say check out his TED Talk. It's a little out there, but it'll definitely get you thinking. Talks a lot about design tools with the digital nervous system, computers that improve our ability to think and imagine, robotic systems that come up with and build radical new designs maybe for bridges or cars or those drones that we're talking about throughout our industry, right? All of that today, the advancements that we're seeing today are at a pace that we've never seen before. In fact, the world will change, many have said, more in the next 20 years than it has in the past 2000. That's a big deal. Are we ready for it? Can we? The title of our presentation is Chasing Innovation. We have spaces within our industry, and you're going to hear Jen talk about this a little bit more, where we are leading, where we're advancing technology, where we're asking the questions before the impact has already hit us. But when it comes to people, we aren't. When it comes to people, we're chasing. We're trying to figure out how that impacts them, where we should be able to have them help us lead. So let's go to the next slide, if you don't mind, Jen, and talk a little bit more about what that means in a different way. If you get nothing else by my points today, this is the big one I want to make. We talk a lot about people, and you will often hear when you talk about people this idea of KSAs, or knowledge, skills, and abilities, the things that make someone unique, the things that make somebody qualified for a position, why you invest in certain people, why they advance to a certain level. In our industry, in civil and construction in particular, civil and infrastructure construction in particular, the two that have been prized most in our history are knowledge and skills. Knowledge is what you think, right? So it's built from experience. And those of you I know out there listening to this webinar probably are talking about, you've heard your peers say, well, that can't be taught. They just have to experience it. Or the best way to learn this is just in the field, or just pairing them with someone else who's been doing this for years and hoping that through this protege and mentoring relationship, perhaps they will take it on. Or that knowledge comes from a book, right? Or if that translates into the skills that we're looking for in a different way. Skill, what we're looking for now is to look at knowledge in a different way and to invest in it in a different way when we come to people. How do we do that? How to create talent development models, and I'll talk about this later in our session, that catapult information foundations and allow for communities of sharing and learning. When we talk about skills, you think of the list on your resume, right? So what can you put on your resume that says you are skilled and ready for this job? And when you have that, you have a finite list. You have a checklist. You have, do they have, in my world, we hire a lot of software engineers, right? So do they know JavaScript and Vue and Python? And if they have, what are the nice to have skills and what are the need to have skills? And then you have a finite group of talent that really has to compete in a different way. The challenge is then is that you can't invest in your own in the same way. And those organizations that are really going to get this are going to focus more on abilities. But abilities are harder to see. Abilities are harder to assess. They're harder to foster in regards to talent development. They're harder to find in regards to talent acquisition. And they're harder to really clarify in regards to engaging or individuals within that organization. Abilities need to be plugged in. Abilities need to be upskilled. Employers need to actually focus on people to foster abilities. And that's how you'll shift from chasing to leading. Next slide. Now, you put all of that in our current world, and our current world brings a lot of things together that we've never seen before. We're on the backside of a pandemic in a space that was already moving at an incredible pace, where innovation affected all the things. So I'm going to define industry a little bit differently here. I'm going to not just say civil and infrastructure construction, but given that we are from HDR and Trimble, I'm also going to say civil and infrastructure construction, SaaS and cloud computing companies, technology companies, data science and consulting. So those organizations, if we look specifically at those, we are seeing some of the highest turnover rates in decades. Yes, it was called the Great Recession for a reason. 38% turnover in the technology industry, 50% across industries, specifically in construction. A lot of you felt that. And then we have a 9% increase in our inflation rate, which is also driving to our next space, the cost of talent. You can go to the next slide for me, Jen. So when we talk about the cost of talent, let's go deeper here. There's another thing that's going to really focus us on how we invest in people, why that matters. What does that look like? The types of challenges that we're facing today. We need you to pause and look at people in a different way, and we need to do so smarter because people are expensive. You need to retain the incredible talent you have, and you need to lean in. We've seen a 15% increase in the average cost of talent in the last 4 years alone. That's across all jobs in our industry. We've seen a 40% increase in our highest demand jobs, very skilled, say BIM operators or software engineers, very specific skill sets. We've seen a quadrupling for a pay rate that we paid a very different rate just 4 years ago to get that same type of talent. Now, let's compare that to a lot of our profits at the same time. Even those that have done really well through the pandemic are reporting increases of less than 4 to 5% a year. Generally, the cost of talent is outpacing our revenue. And that causes a new challenge on how we need to compete and how we need to lean in. Next slide. It also causes us to relook at what those jobs are that are so important and the pace in which those jobs translate. So again, at Infotech, one of our most critical talent pieces is our software engineers. But where just a couple of years ago, even, we were still looking for full stack engineers. Now we really focus on specializations, whether that be front end or user experience or DevOps, to really get at the niche to be able to support the need of the market and how it demands. From CAD drafter to BIM modeler, from field inspector to drone pilot, these jobs are evolving. The people are evolving. And the abilities can evolve with them. You are not going to be able to teach that back in secondary education. You're not going to be able to advance a degree fast enough to keep up. But you as an organization can invest in that talent to allow to keep up. There's a couple other things you need to understand in the changing landscape. We do have a digital world now. We either have organizations that have embraced this, are being forced to embrace this, or will have to embrace this. Regardless of where you work or how you function, regardless of industry, it's not going back. We are flexible, we are virtual. We also have different generations shifting and a completely, sorry, Jen, she wanted me to be done. We also have different generations shifting in a completely different way, working next to each other in a different space than they ever have before. There was a quote that I saw recently that I wanted to read for the webinar here. It's actually from Ev's boss, Cindy Hoagland, over at Trimble. And she said, those who are entering local government are younger, more tech savvy, and willing to embrace technology that can automate and streamline older processes, which will allow agencies to become more efficient and fewer employees. For workers in the workforce today, many of the technologies available are designed with a survey or construction workflows in mind. So it's easier to learn and to understand how to use those technologies. So what we're saying here is that, yes, the world is advancing at a great pace, but it's advancing with users in mind, with an understanding of the people that it's motivated for. We can learn that from the industry in which we're building our technology to match the needs of our users. Build your internal talent strategy to match the needs of your people. Lean on leveling up, upskilling, agility, adaptation, and help them find value and purpose within your mission.
So looking into a little bit more information on our construction industry specifically, right now productivity has gone down almost 30% in the 90s. And why do we think this is happening? Here on the right, we're seeing the construction productivity declining as all other businesses are steadily increasing. So what's going on? We have technology, but do we have a workforce that's really ready to embrace it? So here we can see a little transition into another graph that we're seeing innovation happening faster than we can train and keep up with. Of course, there are other things that are influencing and contributing to what kind of barriers we're facing when it comes to technology implementation. But we're stretching our workforce thin at this point, seeking individuals with skills that are ready to use this technology that isn't quite there yet. So as Tara mentioned, we're really working on designing the technology and innovation to be adaptive to our industry, figuring out how we can draw parallels between implementing current innovation and seeing how we can connect that with existing workflows, or how we can break this down into bite-sized portions that can make innovating and implementing innovation a smoother process.
So looking at how all of this is impacting our industry, there's a handful of places where it's definitely taking a look. We're looking at this model-based delivery method that we're moving towards, where we're handing over our data in a different way to be constructed and operated and maintained. So this is throughout the entire life cycle of our project. Even though we're doing this right now, we're moving towards this shift, we still have to design and construct our projects at the end of the day. That's our job. But so we're trying to be doing all of this stuff at the same time. And that's where we need to have this seamless exchange of data. So we're also looking at different alternative delivery methods too. So I think there is a question in our chat, which I'll read in a minute, but that's based upon this, because usually our typical projects are design, bid, build, and we're moving into alternative delivery methods like design, build, or progressive design, build, or CMGC. And you have to think in these different workflows and using technology so that we're still efficient at the end of the day. We want to make better projects. We want to make better decisions. We want to have better experiences. We don't want to be redoing all of our work over and over again, which we used to be doing in that planometric type of design. So now we have the technology and we have these new workflows, but we want to be able to move towards this. So someone asked, in a cost plus fixed fee design fee model, it incentivizes consulting firms to recruit skill sets rather than train their existing staff, since the cost of higher salaries are passed on to the client directly. So what can people do when they are being denied training by their employer? So I think we're going to actually touch upon this, but this does bring up a good point on where are we finding our staff for all of these different things, especially if people haven't done this before. It's new, it's exciting, we're piloting things. So we'll talk a bit more on that, but we are in this phase, I feel like, over the next handful of years of this transition period, where we're going to have to be working on all of this at the same time, which can be overwhelming, but it's also really exciting. It's what draws me into the industry and into digital delivery. And we also know the new funding available too. There's new funding with the IIJA. We've heard many, many talks about this, but a lot of it comes down to training too. You can actually spend the money on new technology, so you can upskill your workers to train them there too, whether you're in design or construction or operations and maintenance and planning all the way around. So there's new places where we can actually find ways to train our employees, or as employees want to learn more, they can find new ways to do that. So there's a lot going on in the industry about all this.
So in this section, we've gone through these three focus areas where Tara told us a little bit about what is facing us and what challenges are in our workforce. And Jen mentioned the various resources to keep up. Well, I hope I gave a brief overview of social sustainability. And together, these things are solving the industry problems. There is a correlation between ROI, between efficiency and productivity, time, budget, rework, and less experience being required. And really executing on the things that we are discussing can assist in industry problems. So going into shifting mindsets with social sustainability, there are a lot of different perspectives around this. There is a gap in understanding of fully embodying sustainability, including environmental and social. But regardless, either way, this is where the industry is going. There's funding going this way. This is where the conversations are, and we are working to keep up. We're not, maybe one day we cannot be chasing, but we can actually be the leader, start trailblazing in this area. So on how social sustainability impacts us and how it pertains to our industry. Emissions and how we can address these things begin with turning off temperature control or considering renewable sources when it comes to construction equipment. When it comes to safety and planning, it is really key, especially in the industry that we're in, that we take a step back and focus on safety. Right now, the construction industry is one of the most dangerous, notoriously, industries out there. And right now, transportation deaths are at an all-time high. When it goes into DEI and fair play, diverse empowerment, and disadvantaged businesses, we're seeing unions, we're seeing various organizations that are trying to be more transparent when it comes to pay or disclosing on diverse and diversity within an organization. As we move into public engagement, this is really key in our industry because we are designing for people. The projects that we are executing upon are for the people that are around them, and the construction and asset management processes are impacting these individuals. And having access to asset management for emergencies and increasing efficiency that, of course, leaves more resources for other projects and programs. And we'll go into a little more specifics on how we can address these things. And now Tara will tell us a little bit of what a vital role diversity plays in this.
Yeah, so let's underscore the section here for Ev and I, and we said shifting mindsets, right? So a lot of what Ev just talked about with social sustainability are absolutely the right direction, and they are the direction our industry is going. They're going as a reaction to problems we need to solve, right? So let's shift the mindset a little bit and make diversity not a problem we need to solve, but a business imperative, something that actually helps us lead forward. We know that diversity requires recognizing the human tendency to want to be alike, but helping to educate people on the importance of difference. And knowing when you actually lean in to DEI efforts, when you create a space for belonging, when you recognize the uniqueness of experience, of age, of background, of the way people think, the way people how they see the world, a difference in abilities that they can bring to the table born on the experiences that they were brought in, you have different impact. And this isn't Tara saying this, this is Anita B organization, and pretty much any big organization that you would trust out there, with a study in the last 5 years showing that an increase in diversity equals higher job satisfaction, increased organizational resilience, more creativity and innovation, all the things that you want to do. But there's also a couple of big pieces here, and that's going to translate to our industry in particular that I want you to focus on. Age diversity within our industry is one that is really unique. We have an incredibly knowledgeable workforce that is advancing towards retirement age, that have everything we need within their head, and we need that knowledge transfer to younger upcoming generations that think quickly, understand technology, and need to be able to utilize that information to help solve the problems of today. By 2030, millennials and Generation Z, so for those of you out there, I get this a lot, how young are those people? They're anywhere between 18, 20, and 40. Okay, so this is a large generation. So millennials and Generation Z will be 75% of the workforce by 2030. That is a huge shift, where baby boomers are the majority of the workforce right now. 30% of our workforce in 2030 will also be gig-based, which means many of our employees are coming to you thinking they are selling their skills for a moment in time, for impact. And if they don't see alignment, continue to move on. Organizations can't fight this. You need to understand it and embrace it. So if we go to the next slide, and I can do an entire presentation on this slide, and Ev loves it, and we probably will. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking just so those of you that geek out at this stuff can look at it. When we talk about age diversity, that's when we start talking about this idea of generations. And generations are born from formative experiences that they share. That leads to similarities in how they utilize technology and how they see the world and the values that they hold most dear. This slide gives you a little bit of an idea of our current work percentage in the United States in each of this generation. It's the first time in our history that we have 5 generations working side by side in our workforce who see the world very differently and have very different skills that we need to lean into and help find a space to utilize in a different way. Next slide for me, Jen. I promise those of you that want that presentation, we'll do a generations presentation. What's most important here is that we're not ready for it, right? Deloitte recently released a study where they said 83% of global executives report that they're not ready to manage the workforce that is coming at us. Not just 5 generations, but AI and robots right next to each other. Yes, the construction industry generally is not known for being automated, but we have many technology advances that are coming at us, and we will witness a revolutionary change. We are feeling it. And we need to lean on the people that can adapt with that.
Okay, next up, I'm going to talk about one of those key orange, yellow words that was on the screen before, and it's digital delivery. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. And when we talk about digital delivery, I always think about it as the umbrella. Everything is under that within our industry on how everything is changing. So it's definitely, we're talking about like the project life cycle at an agency. It's how do you utilize your data as a consultant? You know, how are you designing contractors and inspectors? How are you actually building everything? So as we look back to our graph, how does digital delivery and everything we've been talking about, especially with the workforce, impacting all these 3 things? So when we're looking at the industry, digital delivery is impacting it by how we're collecting and then ultimately utilizing all of this data throughout the life cycle of a project. With the technology, we definitely see a lot of advancements with our software and our hardware. And just back from what Tara was saying with our people, and you have a number of different generations, how are they utilizing it and how are they shifting forward? And it's definitely making a huge impact, and sometimes not in the best way. It's definitely causing issues in terms of having to start and stop or having to learn something. And how do you keep going? Because like I said, we still have to design and maintain and build our infrastructure assets. And ultimately, digital delivery is impacting our workforce, but in a good way. It's making us collaborate more. It's helping to break down those silos. I know we've always been talking about being siloed, but then ultimately what's really triggering it and what's pushing it are the impacts from digital delivery and everything within the industry. We need to communicate better. We're changing our workflows to actually be able to do that. And I think that's huge. And I think the changes from where our generations are and what people are learning today is impacting that. So ultimately, we're also looking at a lot of new processes and workflows, and that's where that technology and the industry is overlapping. We're looking at now having connected workflows. We're able to share more information. It's a lot easier. We have the internet, we have the cloud. We can do that seamlessly. I can send pictures to someone instantaneously, and that might not have happened as fast or as easily a few years ago, and then definitely not 15 to 20 years ago. That just didn't happen. So now we're going to be able to use these new tools to connect all of our data together. We're looking at our 3D data now, that visualizing all of that. That's coming into our 3D models. And as we're looking at that, we're actually seeing this shift on the transportation side to models as the legal document. Instead of having those 2D pieces of paper being the legal document to build off of, we're now looking at our data and our models being what's used, and have that legislation side, in the legal side, legality, that's a good word, of how we're looking at our data and then actually being able to construct from that. And then ultimately, we're looking at our new processes and workflows on collaboration, those data handoffs. We're doing more virtual meetings, and then that obviously, as you can tell, has some issues in and of itself. But then how are we changing the way that we're doing our jobs and our work? We could be working from anywhere in the world, but still collaborating and still getting things done. We definitely saw that over the pandemic. How did we shift to actually be able to do that? And because we had the technology, we were able to do that easier. And we definitely saw that across the board with different generations, and then just different technology that we had. How easy was that shift in the beginning and then all the way through something like the pandemic? Next up, we are definitely seeing different employment opportunities. And this is one of the biggest things that I like to see within the industry when I go do talks. It's where are we changing our roles and responsibilities, not only on our projects, but in our careers. We're definitely seeing the shift on our projects where you might have a new role and responsibility that you're doing, or you might even have a new person or a job in a project, such as a BIM model manager. We see agencies moving towards having digital delivery sections within their agency now. How do you drive that change? You need a group of people to do this. It's not just one person, it's many. So we're seeing that change. And then in construction, we're also seeing new jobs coming into play in terms of they might need a modeler to be able to help advance some of these different pieces of digital delivery. In career paths, I see it was always going more towards project management, but now we need people in technology to stay there because we need those experts and we need that advancement that's their whole job, is helping to focus on the data and where that's going. So we definitely see a change in those career paths in all of the consulting world. And then ultimately, it's coming down to education. How do people learn that they could actually do this career, that they could go to college, they could go get a job afterwards in all the options that we've talked about today? And that comes back to your K through 12. It's the STEM programs, it's the science fairs, it's all the great stuff that we're getting to give back to the younger generations to help train them in a different way. So maybe it's a new college course that's getting implemented. It's technology. It's getting them to look at everything when they're younger so that they know there's opportunities out there. And if we don't do that within our industry, we're not going to have the people to actually be able to construct these projects in infrastructure in the future. So it behooves us not only to change our own roles and responsibilities, our own career path, but to give it back to those younger generations.
All right, so what you're probably thinking you're hearing a little bit from us. So let me just pause and make sure that I do underscore this point. Yes, we are saying for us to really try to solve these concerns, to really get ahead of it, we need to look at them holistically. We need to do a little bit of all the things, right? We do need to look at the pipeline, as Jen just mentioned, and Ed will underscore. We need to create a sustainable future. We need to attract talent in. We need to ensure that we're continuing to lean into STEM and teaching some fundamental skills that can translate and be built upon. But they don't have to be so specific, again, that they can't be translated and shifted and invested in once they're with someone is within an organization. So what we're talking about here is talent development or training within our organizations and how that is shifting to also keep pace with our industry. The lesson here that we can take from the digital delivery model that Jen just said, we know how to do this, right? We understand that we need to create a pace. We need to embrace technology. We need to allow for both synchronous and asynchronous learning. We need to allow for people to get learning that works for them in snippets and in pieces, to be able to find the knowledge they need, whether that be in the form of a tool or investing in some sort of hub or product that you've built, or through a community, a partnership you may have, for example, between HGR, Trimble, and Infotech, where we share knowledge and we understand and we can look to each other for the things that we bring to the table. How do you create those types of community-based learning? This is not knowledge we need to hide. It's knowledge we need to share. And we need shared language, which we also are talking about in our industry a lot, shared language in how we teach. We also need to focus on being action-based because that really shortens our time to productivity. Not only do we need to learn, and we need to apply in quick spaces and in safe spaces. So we're redefining training from both a medium and a mode standpoint. And we can take lessons, again, from where we're doing this right on the digital delivery front. All right, I think I keep it. Yeah. So now we want to focus a little bit on people. And I did cross out, and this was an interesting edit, so I'll just share with the webinar. At the last moment, I went ahead and just crossed out workforce, and Jen asked me if that was a mistake. Our industry still talks about workforce readiness. It talks about workforce development. If you go to TRB, you're going to be on a workforce development committee. But ultimately, whether you're in B2B, B2C, H to Z, I don't care what kind of thing you compete in, you're in an H to H business, a human to human. Workforce development isn't about widgets. We don't get to move people around a chessboard. It's about people. You need to understand who they are, how they see the world, how they impact, and you need to pull them into the conversation. When you do that, what they give back is quite extraordinary. Let me hand it over to Ev to spend a little bit more time on that.
So I'm going to go into a little bit of how technology can help solve our problems. I really love this quote. The adoption of technology can not only enhance the efficiency and functionality of professionals in the industry, but also enable new talent within the workforce to contribute at a higher level faster than ever before. So how are we doing this? When it comes to working in 3D, we are able to overlay for a clearer understanding and compile information together. This also leads to more digestibility and understanding. When we go into machine control, this implementation is improving safety, optimizing processes and material use, and ensuring minimal disturbance outside of the construction zone. 3D design and collaboration, seeking all stakeholder perspectives, is really working with construction, asset management teams, along with the impacted community stakeholders. We're ensuring from the beginning that the design is construction ready. We're planning for asset management and really focusing on informing and seeking feedback from the community on construction, completion, and maintenance, not only the project. And it's really key to maintain this collaboration across the full asset lifecycle, be that from initial construction, maybe all the way through the next capital project. But it is key to go beyond just planning. So now our next opportunity is coming into e-learning and virtual training. The virtual training and remote instruction is more accessible from anywhere at any time. This accessibility is key to make sure that everyone is up to speed, similar to having accessibility to information on the project and having information on how a project is being completed. We need to provide those resources for individuals within our organization and even information that they can share outside of the organization or with other colleagues. When it comes to onboarding, we can start including topics like diversity and two-way teaching, showing different ways from the beginning, talking about workforce readiness, not necessarily just what your job is going to look like. We can develop hardware and software skills and really, again, make sure this is accessible. But beyond accessibility, there's scalability. This is making sure that everyone can access this. We can go from having one session in a room with 10 people to having 500 employees watching the same video or having the same understanding of a course that they were able to take together. And of course, we circle back to user friendliness here. When we have virtual training and remote instruction, it would be really great if we can have someone providing feedback or progress information from the site to the office, for example. But if this is not a streamlined process and it's not working hand in hand with current processes, this is not going to be executable. So beyond just training and upskilling our workforce, we really need to focus on our technology on these things as well. So how is the technology directly impacting the social sustainability features that we've discussed? So surrounding community impacts are pertaining to disturbance and public health. Emissions on the community, noise disturbance, increased congestion or closed roads, and accessibility can really be key in these things. And we need to talk about accessibility not only in project completion, but in the construction process itself. Are we making sure that individuals with disabilities are still going to have access to the same routes that they may need access to in their day-to-day? When it comes to the safety of employees, machine control can avoid dangerous areas like protected lands and habitats, and autonomous collection technology can prevent dangerous areas needing to be entered by people. We can replace these things in dangerous terrains or mines or cliffs with some automated technology like robots that can go out and collect this information while we preserve the safety of our team. When it comes to diversity tracking, not only making sure that we are satisfying DBE requirements, but also noting if repairs and maintenance are being equitably distributed. We're making sure that, again, like I mentioned, a lot of these communities have been facing even negative impacts of infrastructure projects coming in. A lot of these communities may be closer to industrial areas. Of course, there's public health implications, and tracking the diversity of these things can really help inform how we can make progress in the future when it comes to equity in the industry. So having access to asset information in case of an emergency, of course, unfortunately, we were not able to give this presentation in real life because of a major flood. And having access and understanding to georeferenced information of asset locations can really help when there might be major damage. There may be a line that is causing contamination to groundwater. A lot of these things can be impacting the communities. And if we can find a blocked drain that can help alleviate a flood in a community or decrease damage to surroundings, that's really a key opportunity to implement technology. Some of the things that we talked about in community engagement are the importance of working with and understanding the community impacts. But how can we work to implement these things? Plan sheets are hard. I'm a civil engineer, and I have a very hard time personally visualizing what a cross section and a 2D plan sheet might look like in the real world. Once we move into 3D, these have a lot more digestibility. We can see a picture of exactly what is going to go in. We can have various stakeholders, be them from construction, engineering, or the community, that can all see and understand the same picture. And this goes back into that collaboration as well, that everyone is talking about the same thing. Beyond this, the georeferencing in the real world and using augmented reality, for example, can really help communities understand exactly what the impacts are going to be on them. They can see exactly how far the limit of disturbance might be compared to their driveway. They might be able to visualize scheduling and understand if they're not going to have access to their rate of work that day, and really making sure that we keep everyone informed. And of course, higher efficiency results in more resources for other projects. We know that there's a lot of funding coming out, but we also know that almost every construction project goes over time and over budget. Going over time is increasing these construction impacts on communities. And of course, we want to optimize the amount of money that we can spend in improving infrastructure across the country and in the world.
All right, I'm going to answer live one of the questions that's in there to kind of lead into the slide, which is a little bit of a pivot. Someone asked, is there an approximate cost delta for training and developing an employee and retaining over time versus the cost of new talent every 2 to 3 years? Would the cost of new talent outpace retention, typically in design as well as construction? It's going to be a little hard for me in real time to give you specific numbers, though I could absolutely get that data, but I can talk across industry and I can talk about what we see. When you look at costs of talent, easily double to 3 times the cost on average across industries to hire externally than to invest and retain internally in talent. Why is that? It's mostly those soft costs, right? So when you're hiring externally, you have the time to fill. You have the onboarding time for someone to get in, understand the culture, understand the organization, understand the skills in which they have impact, and then to get up and running with productivity that has an enormous amount of cost. Not to mention all the hard costs of searching for that talent. And typically, when you refill a role from outside and you again focus on knowledge and skills, you pay more for it, as one of the questions earlier mentioned. Versus investing internally in that development where you're more engaged, you're more productive, and the cost of that internal investment is much less. So I wanted to just do a summary for us. And when we talk about investment in people, if I was talking to my peers in people and organizational development, which is the industry that I am aligned with, but the industry I serve is civil and infrastructure construction. That's what Infotech competes with, right? That's the technology in which we produce. In our industry, when we talk about a people strategy, I have 5 pieces of advice that really summarize this. First, double down on redeployment. Now, redeployment is a made-up word that's recently being termed in the last year, but I love it because it aligns very well with a lot of what Eva said throughout this presentation. She's reminded us about the key components of sustainability, of stewardship within organizations. People are not widgets, as we talked about, but you can take a similar approach to conserving talent as we do in conserving resources. People, once often called human capital, I hate that term almost as much as I don't like workforce readiness versus people development, but are your most important resource. And while they aren't those widgets, they can be inspired, they can be repurposed, and they can be invested in. They will allow you then to take those abilities and help them find a space where they have different impact. This is often called finding the right seat at the right time for that individual. And that is a mutual conversation between the organization and the business needs and the individual themselves. The second area that I'll ask you to really focus on is investing in talent development and open innovation. We already talked about talent development quite a few times, and again, it can be a presentation within itself, but we can learn a lot from our industry in this space. That's learning and development, professional development, skill and industry training, leadership development, competency development. Technology empowers a way for self-learning in a different way in our industry. Create access to tools, venues, and support those opportunities to learn and build on those ideas and put them into action immediately. Organizational development ties straight into talent acquisition. And yes, talent acquisition is one of the biggest problems we're trying to solve, but I'm trying to talk about the more creative way to solve it. It's not to continue to compete in the red ocean that's out there, it's to look at the people you have internally and change your structure to follow your strategy. Invest in efficiency, momentum, and cultures that support those pieces, and develop a structure and allow for talent planning that moves people. How do you do that? Leverage data. And if our industry understands anything, it's how to leverage data. We introduce technology to help manage that information. Data exists about people in a similar way. Data can help you guide efficiency, operational excellence, transformation that you need to make. Human measurement is not the same as engineering measurement. I understand that, but it's possible, it's predictive, and it can be accurate. So lean in, listen to your people, understand their profile, know what they're looking for, have conversations, and invest in that. And lastly, center on those abilities we talked about earlier, shift from that knowledge and skill, and find a culture and create cultures where they belong.
Thanks, Tara. So I think we have covered a lot of information throughout this whole talk. So we're just going to quickly summarize this and then hopefully get to some Q&A, because I think there's lots of great questions that people are posting in the Q&A section. But ultimately, we've been chasing collaboration. We're innovating. We're doing a lot of different things within our industry, but ultimately I made up this fun equation, because if you take everything that's going on within our industry with digital delivery, and we take a look at maybe that people development, you add that together, but then you take social sustainability and wrap that all up, that's really where we're pushing and driving our future. And if we can do all of that, I really think we're going to be successful, not only just creating better infrastructure projects, but we're going to be able to pull all sorts of different people together that haven't been in our industry before. And we're definitely going to need everybody to get together. New people are coming in, new jobs, new roles, everything's really shifting in this way to be able to do some really cool stuff. And if you're looking for really cool stuff, there's a ton of articles, webinars, people's projects. Take the time to see what others are doing and how that can actually impact you and maybe inspire you to actually go and chase some of this innovation and collaboration. So ultimately, that's where we want to help everybody to drive to.
So in closing, just some parting thoughts is that we do everything for people. Everything in our industry and everything we are producing is for people. And we must think about how everything we do affects everyone it touches. And that really includes us. That includes our industry, that includes our workforce, and that includes all of the people that we serve. And we can do these things. And how can we help address and work towards progress? We hope our presentation today has brought some initial ideas and insights on how you can work to apply these things and see what the benefits are. And we really look forward to continuing the conversation from here. Thank you. Look at that timing.
And I think we have some questions too.
That was absolutely fantastic. Really, I cannot, at least from my perspective, I took such a lot away from the whole conversation and your presentations. I know we had a just tiny little glitch in the beginning, but once you guys started going, it was really quite outstanding. And you've answered a couple of questions during the presentation. We have two more questions to our attendees. We are going to go a little overtime. The session is being recorded and it will be posted in the coming week or so. So if you miss something at the tail end, look for it on our social media channels and for the recording, and you'll be able to go back to that section and find your answer. So the first question we have is, as part of social sustainability and diversity, how do you all tackle immigration issues affecting people from different backgrounds in the industry? Immigrants are a huge part of the STEM field in the United States, but I have not heard much in general on how this particular population is being supported in the workplace. I have seen tremendous layoffs from the technology industry as well. And I don't know which one of you.
I didn't want to step on Ev if she had a thought there, but I can start, and I'll let Ev move in a little bit. There's a couple different questions in there. So I'm going to start with the last piece, which is, yes, we've seen tremendous layoffs in the technology industry. But we also have, it's a leveling out, right? So we advanced quickly, people scaled up, they're scaling back. They're needing to scale back because of the cost of talent outpacing revenue. That is the major driving force. But we do think that it will level back out. And yes, there are people predicting this great recession. We had the great resignation. Whatever the next R is going to be is coming. But there is still a need for talent in a completely different way. So then I'm going to try to answer the first question second here in regards to immigrants or those from outside the United States looking for opportunities in the United States. We actually see within our field in particular a great alignment between those that are very much focused on that skill and knowledge area, also ability, but definitely skill and knowledge area, where individuals from outside the United States can be a match for those spaces. We are behind though. We are behind in the workforce readiness in their ability to work in the United States, to be able to have, unless it's a truly global company that have already put a lot of those things in place, to be able to support those types of jobs. Right. So it is difficult without, and this is again where I'm coming, the world in which we define, if you are looking for any type of sponsorship or support for those individuals, where we have organizations that are very supportive in their area, those applications are based on skills. They're based on knowledge. They're based on what you can see on a resume and clearly define so that they add to the workforce here. It's very hard to place that on abilities. So it is a place where I think we do need to continue to look. And I think it's also a place where we are falling behind. I'd be interested in the tie to social sustainability there, though, if Ed had a comment to continue.
Absolutely. And I think the social sustainability perspective is a little more outward facing here. So Tara is our people person. But when it comes to the underrepresented communities that we're serving, we're finding a lot of consistency with immigrants and immigrant communities. And of course, they're facing these harsher impacts of climate change. They're facing less attention towards repair needs, and they're facing failing infrastructure, and really bringing that to the forefront of our considerations when it comes to executing projects and making repairs is going to start positively impacting these things. Not sure if that totally answers the question, but feel free to follow up.
Okay, before I get to the other one that's in the Q&A section, I have one from our host actually, who is asking, do you foresee technology lowering barriers to entry in the industry and creating opportunities to broaden the talent pool? How might this reshape the employment landscape in the industry and cost to deliver projects in the future?
I can start off with this one. I would say technology is lowering barriers because we're really providing tools that are ideally streamlining and simplifying the infrastructure execution process that we're in. We are having less experienced operators go into machines that are driving themselves. I personally have graded a full area with a motor grader, and I could not reach the pedals on the motor grader. I don't know anything about executing construction. So this is just one of the examples that I have of how we are really empowering other individuals. When it comes to inspections, we are providing access to georeference information on site. Our inspectors don't necessarily have to read and figure out what points they're looking to connect, or try and figure out where on a 2D plan sheet they're standing. And there's a lot less opportunity for mistakes or for loss of data integrity as we connect all of these things. So there's no data reentry. We're not running off of just pencils or eyeballing or visualizations. We're actually able to directly streamline collecting this data as we execute, understanding what those processes and how we can, increase efficiency in these processes and how we can avoid losing data and the data integrity as it goes through phases. And really collaborating is contributing to this as well. The only way we can execute on these more streamlined processes is if every stakeholder is committed and is working towards these things.
Yeah, I can also add a little bit to that from the design aspect. The technology is definitely lowering the barriers, and it's also helping create different types of jobs. And some of these legacy jobs that have been in part of our industry for many years are now shifting. So we're moving away from that just CAD drafter and moving more towards the modeling side of things, or maybe a GIS analyst, or using that data in a different way. So having a technology that lowers that barrier to entry, these easier workflows so that they can get in to be able to do it. It's allowing that shift. So not cutting people off and saying you don't have a job anymore. It's shifting what you're doing. And you will have to learn something new, but it's that barrier to entry that we're trying to help move forward to identifying those workflows and making sure we're working with our vendors and everybody else within technology to make it easier. And we see it a lot too in the gaming industry. If you can open an app and you don't understand how that app works, you're going to delete it within a number of seconds. So we can't really be doing that with our engineering software, but it's that same mentality. It's what makes a good experience. If you have a good experience, you're going to be willing to try something new and keep adding on to that. So if we can work on that, that's where I think we're going to see the best area to be able to find more opportunities and pull that talent pool forward.
I had one question before I get to this last one. You mentioned earlier there was a comment about we're going to see more change by, and I missed the date, than we have in the past 2,000 years. What was the date? Do you guys remember? I'm going to have to go back into the recording and look at it.
Tara.
I think it was, yeah.
No, it's so in the next 20 years, and that is a TED Talk. It's a couple years old, but he basically said in the next 20 years, you will see more advancement than in technology on a micro and macro scale than you've seen in the last 2,000 all combined, because that is the advancement of technology today. And again, I would recommend that TED Talk, but he brings you all the way out there so you can be pulled back in.
That's great. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for looking at that. We have another question, and I agree wholeheartedly with this is from Alexa Mitchell. Said, great job. These ladies did a tremendous job highlighting important topics we never talk about. Thanks, Tara, for saying workforce development is not what we should focus, but rather people development. I love it. But I do have a question regarding virtual training. What would you say to those who say virtual opportunities can effectively replace in-person training, especially complicated training related to digital delivery?
I'll start, and then I'd love to hear my colleagues, because I'm going to talk about it from, I'm a talent development practitioner, so I am constantly the facilitator of training. So I lean in and I look for impact, and I'm going to answer the question and say it shouldn't replace, but it should supplement. It allows for the need of the individual. So if we're talking about people, we're looking at individualized needs and organizational needs. What's the best medium and the best mode given the constraints? If I'm saying what's the best medium, no constraints allowed, is in-person training for certain opportunities with ability to actually apply and discuss and dialogue. The best thing we can do where we will actually see what we call that return on value, where people get it. Yeah, you can prove that. But the time frame that requires, the amount of cost it requires to send trainers, pulling people off sites versus adapting to a more comprehensive approach to learning that allows for small micro learnings and snippets, virtual training, and then application, an ability to ask questions and dialogue, and then perhaps an ability to then flip the classroom, as they call it, and ask your facilitator not to teach to you, but to answer questions like we're doing right now on this webinar, has more impact. And it also has more impact on the learner. But then you also have to flip that one more time and go, who's the person asking the question? And that's what I'm going to always come back to, know your people. Because if you know your workforce, the need and what you're trying to teach, it may be a different medium and mode that I would recommend. Hope that helps. Evan, go ahead.
Yeah, just a note, I really like Tara mentioning the importance of being able to ask questions. Having a back and forth dialogue is really important. And I think it's also key to highlight the various ways that not in-person or virtual training can happen. You could theoretically, if everybody's super technologically advanced, we could all be wearing HoloLens 2s from different places and talking about the same thing. Or we could just have a chat box or have access to the person that is giving the presentation or giving the class. But again, we can't fully replace people. We can supplement these things. We can make sure that our published virtual learning isn't necessarily just a 1 hour long YouTube video. Is this interactive? Is this engaging? Do we have people responding and maybe in some cases proving you have to get a 5 out of 10 or whatever in order to proceed to the next lesson? And it really does play into engagement and digestibility of these courses.
I think virtual training too gives an opportunity though, because you can impact those who have disabilities and the way they learn to be able to give them a different avenue if they couldn't do it in person. I saw this just with friends during COVID that they had to work from home and they could work from home now, that it allowed and it opened up opportunities for them to be able to train differently, to be able to learn, to be able to do it maybe at night if that's what they needed to do because of their family. So it won't, I don't think it can replace in-person training, but it provides some new opportunities that we can leverage. And if we do it the right way, I think that's what's going to be impactful.
I agree. Excellent. Okay, and our final answer that we have posted today is, how do we navigate salary increases without threatening to leave with another job offer? Not a lot of data / reference points for BIM related engineers and those implementing cutting edge tools and workflows / digital delivery like there are for traditional senior transportation engineer of so many years. You are worth what others are willing to pay you.
Yeah, so I'll start this one too, and I would love my colleagues to weigh in from their point of view, because they're the individuals that everyone's trying to acquire and maybe ask to move because they are so talented and so capable. Don't worry, HDR and Trimble, I'm not trying to recruit Evan and Jen. I just want to work with them. But as the person who is the recruiter and the person that is the people manager within our organization that has to help our organization understand that this is real, right? This is a space. This is what I hear all the time from my incredible leaders within our organization that are going, they got this LinkedIn reach out and the recruiter started in the first line with, I'm going to pay this person $20,000 more than they make today. That's what is going on the market. So first I'm going to answer with, it is a real answer, but I know it sounds like, oh, that's tough. First, money does not, it can motivate if it's not right, but it's not the number one motivator for most people. You need to look at the comprehensive support you have for your individuals, and individuals will understand if you're investing in their talent development, if you're investing in engagement, if they have a culture where they feel like they can belong, and most importantly, if they feel like they themselves have impact every day on what the organization is trying to do and they're seen for that. It's going to have to be a good amount more money for them to jump. Now, I'm also not pushing that answer away. You do have to try to compete in this market. And you have to do the best you can to continue. And there are tools out there, and I'd be comp data. There's a couple others that are pretty good, and you can get the type of data that's real data, not the LinkedIn recruiter just threw something out there, but real data on competitive rates for a field. But as I said, we're seeing those rise at an exponential rate, and organizations have to be very picky now about where they're making those investments. They really need to look at their positions across the organization and make sure that they're optimized for current state needs and not past needs. And they need to make sure that they are being compensated correctly. So ultimately, I would say first, you lean into an individual, any conversation, and you make sure that you understand what motivates them past the compensation. And then you also have an honest conversation about where your organization is able to compete and where they're paying and where that delta might be, and advocate for where you need changes to be able to happen. Because yes, individuals are worth what the market will pay, but they're also worth what they feel they have a value and worth for what they're giving back and where they're seen. And that's not just based on money alone. That helps. It is a hard conversation right now, though, and I will say I get it all the time, and many organizations, people in my role, that's the number one conversation that I'm talking about with my peers, other people officers, is how we continue to compete with the cost of talent. we've done at Infotech across the board looks at our compensation every year, when typically this would have to be an every 2 to 3 year look with some spot checks. We've had to look every year for the last 4 years because the markets are changing that rapidly.
And I'll touch in really quick. I mean, there's not a lot of data for these BIM related roles because they didn't exist 5 years ago. And I know because I had to make my own job. But like, it's as we change and these new jobs are popping up, that's where you're going to see a lot of the higher cost coming from, because it's the people with these backgrounds that have been cultivated over a number of years. And it's very hard to find us because we just don't exist. I've gotten that a lot. Like, where can we find another Jen? You can't. Like, my experiences have made me to be where I am today. So it's now, how do we create these career paths and where people want to grow and go into? And I think that's where you can also take a look too. Like, you're bringing someone into these types of roles, but where do they want to go to? And those are the conversations you can also have too, is where do you see yourself growing in these 5 years of in this type of position? What do you want to do? Along with, where is the technology going in the industry and all the workflows? So it's a pretty big world that we're all moving into at the same time, and it's gonna cost something.
And I think this is a really great example about how social sustainability is impacting our people, not necessarily only the people we serve. And as we know, like globally, there's a big initiative going towards how can we be more transparent about pay equity? Can we publish ranges? And there's a lot of initiatives beyond just our industry that are working towards these things. And while it is seemingly a I guess further along issue within our industry because there's so much change going, this is something that the whole world is working to face.
All right. Well, that's just fantastic. I know everybody who attended today wants to give you a big round of applause. If you were in the room, everybody will be clapping at this point to say thank you. It was a fantastic presentation. We will be, again, recording it, and so it will be available. We will be posting it on all of our social channels. I think you've all said what you want to say. If anybody has anything else that they want to say, I will open it up to you, but I think we're going to wrap it up at this point. All right, great. Thank you all for being here. Thank you again to Tara and Ev and Jen, and thank you so much. It was excellent.